What's going on, people? Happy Monday. Welcome into our latest TDR Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, sdales. Hope you all had a good weekend. A little bit of things we want to get into. It's going to be a short week this week, obviously, with the big holiday season coming up. We've had some really busy weeks leading up to this. So quite honestly, maybe a slow week may not be that bad, but we're still going to cover off some important news and what we should basically be focused and prepared on as we head into this holiday season. So let's welcome in Mr. Anthony Varrell here on a Monday. And I'm not saying things were dead today, but it was a little quieter than what we're used to.
Yeah, if you want to say that.
I see a smirk on your face. Do you not agree with that?
Yeah, things were relatively quiet.
Relatively quiet. Okay. Yeah, did you see that eye? Sorry, I got a little nicked doing some yard work on the weekend. Do I look tough? Kind of brings me back to where I was in my early 20s, but those times have gone past. How was your weekend?
My weekend was good. Got a lot of stuff done around the house. Figured out what I was going to be doing this week for Thanksgiving. Got some golfing. Dolphins won again. No complaints.
Yeah. What do you got planned for the Thanksgiving weekend? Anything special?
Nothing. I'm doing nothing.
Just chilling?
Chilling. I've informed my family that I will not be making turkey, so we will be having an alternative Thanksgiving.
Ooh, what's on the menu? What are you thinking?
Wagyu prime rib.
Ooh,
going to roast.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
so what time? That's going to start early, I think. Shad ran into Sabat at Tim Hortons. Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah.
Lots going on with that report, but yeah, interesting stuff to say the least. But anyway, let's jump into today, and let's start with some interesting news actually out of New Jersey. It's actually some really good news and interesting news, as I said, concerning public workers within the state involving medical marijuana. You want to share more on what I just outlined and why this is actually a story that we should be talking about?
Yeah, I was surprised to see this. It was a company called Benibis, Benibis. So public and private companies in 3 municipalities in New Jersey are offering benefits to employees for medical marijuana. This is huge. This is the first that I've seen of this. I know that they're currently working on expanding to Maine. This is the machine, and this is the larger argument for medical marijuana. This is acknowledging that marijuana does have some sort of therapeutic benefit.
Yeah.
If it didn't, employers, I don't think, would be offering benefits. And let's not get this conflated in any means with insurance covering cannabis. Insurance is not covering this. This is a benefit that is paid for by the employee that will render the employee to utilize benefits and discounts as it relates to medical cannabis. I'm paying very, very close attention. I've reached out to somebody from the company to get them to come on, and I'm very, very interested to hear about how this could sprawl out in terms of reaching other states and growing as it is.
Yeah, I was going to say, are we getting a sneak preview of what other states and regions are going to look like? Because this is, great, huge step in the right direction when it comes to the overall perception of the industry, right?
Huge. So one of the main things around industries or nascent industries that we saw in psychedelics as it relates to ketamine therapy, it really started to take off when they could figure out how to bill insurance. Yeah. I don't think that's coming anytime soon. It would take major legwork and reform from the administration, as well as changing of the guard on a federal level, which we do think some sort of that, something to that nature is going to happen in 2025, 2026. But this is like the tip of the iceberg. This is something this is a data point that is very, very important that I think everybody should be watching as we start to progress.
So if you were to put all these pieces together and more regions, basically adopt something like this, what's the huge domino effect it would have potentially for the industry besides people that are directly benefiting it from?
It's legitimizing it. I mean, it's legitimizing it. It's acknowledging that there is a benefit to medical marijuana. And it's just a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about insurance companies. We've got a great interview coming up on Wednesday with Arasar Zadian. He's the CEO of Avicana Incorporated. They've actually been around for quite some time, but we were having a conversation with them last week, which really grabbed my attention. But like, what they say, 80 or 90% of their business is through insurance coverage, which is massive.
It is in Canada. Medical is legitimate though in Canada. It's federally legal.
Yeah.
Cannabis is it the genie's out of the bottle? We see more medical research. We see it being covered by insurance. We see veterans getting the care that they need. Canada is doing it right. Granted, the economics of the industry might be the viability of the economics of the industry is up for debate.
Yeah.
Certain amounts of people, but you can't argue that Canada has gotten it right with getting the plant in people's hands and being able to use the levers to make it more affordable and make it more accessible to people that actually need it.
Well, what I like about their story from day one is they stayed in their own lane, and that was to focus primarily on medical for these past 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And they have a wealth of knowledge, not only about what they're doing, but what are the domino effects if cannabis is rescheduled into the US? Who are some of these agencies going to lean to when it comes to experience, both domestically and internationally as well? So we'll unveil some of those conversations on Wednesday with their ass. It's going to be really, really good. And really point out, I think there's a lot of various companies that'll claim that they're medical first, but I think we can obviously read between the lines that a lot of these companies are more on the recreational CPG side, and he'll explain as to why. So that'll be a interesting interview and conversation that I'll have on Wednesday. So make sure to check in at 4:00. What were we going to add? I think you're going to add something.
No.
Let's now shift to news number 2 involving RFK, which again showing early signs of support for both the cannabis and psychedelic industries when it comes to research. The latest, which was reported by UK-based The Guardian earlier today, outlining that RFK Jr. plans to cut prescription drugs and increase weed and psychedelic access. We've learned a lot about his stance on this, but again, doubling down, he continued to reiterate his support for this industry, which as you just got done saying, legitimizing, this just further helps the industry in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, this is the precursor to the conversation that we just had. So these headlines actually should have been flipped, thinking of it in terms of like show planning. RFK, pending him getting confirmed, sets the wheels in motion for further medical marijuana access, further benefits, insurance coverage, getting the HHS in line to a greater degree than what they've already done with the 250-page report that they yielded is how we get further. Also, someone had asked about Marty McCary. It was a study, I think, with inhalable cannabis as it relates to cardiovascular disease. You got to understand, too, that he reports to RFK if RFK gets confirmed. FDA is under the umbrella of HHS. So really, RFK is going to be able to set the mandates and set the tones. The study, I think, had a ton of chinks in it in terms of the data used, but I also don't think that we should be so arrogant to say that lighting plant material on fire and inhaling it doesn't have some sort of adverse effect on the human body.
Good point.
I don't buy into that, into disputing that. I think it needs to be studied to a further degree. Agreed. That being said, the fact that you are talking about the notion of combusting a plant material and inhaling it has absolutely no relevancy when you talk about the scheduling of something. Cigarettes aren't scheduled. There's a ton of other combustibles that are not scheduled. So the conversation is not analogous, but I do think what he said has some sort of merit if we're not talking in a vacuum.
You ever see the show Mad Men?
Mad Men?
Mad Men. Sorry, did I say
Yes.
Mad Men?
Yeah, they smoke and drink at lunch every day, like it's going out of style.
That's the way life was back then, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, you make a very good point about cigarette smoking. But you know what? Regardless of what you think or don't think, the reality is what RFK is trying to do is he wants to look at this research, which is going to happen. And that's all you want in this situation is a topic of conversation, Absolutely. Be part of that conversation and actually push the narrative to push forward. That's all you need. There's just some comments here that I was checking this out. Guap, you're writing a few things right now. Okay, I see what you're doing. Anthony just touched on that. Still haven't heard people talk about Jerome Adams. I hope Trump doesn't pick him again. He literally parroted Sam's lines.
I don't even know who Jerome Adams is.
I don't either.
For what?
Whole memo. Do you want to outline more on that?
I'm assuming that's talking about potential DEA head.
No, Mad Men. Mad Men is a series, not Mad Men as in the cannabis company. But yeah, well, regardless, Psychedelic stocks benefited from obviously the announcement from a couple of weeks ago. I'm not saying the same is going to happen here right now, but again, a lot of conversation, a lot of attention pertains to this. I haven't really heard him say recently anything about cannabis. It has a lot about psychedelics, but clearly he wants more access and more research, which is a great thing. Mohammed Shaheen, yeah, I'm okay. I was doing some yard work over the weekend, and literally massive branch came out of the tree. It was a little windy where I was and smacked me right in the eye, but here I am still. But thanks for reaching out and asking. But he got in a fight with a stick, says Irish. Yes. All right, let's now move.
So
and go ahead.
I don't argue. I don't argue with that statement either. I mean, this isn't your grandma's marijuana. Marijuana's gotten a lot stronger. We want to talk about high strength concentrates and really where a lot of these products are. That's a completely different conversation. But I do agree with you I do agree with him that the cannabis that is being sold through channels, whether it's adult use or medical, it's not your grandma's marijuana in terms of strength.
What comment did you read based off of that from who?
The one that called him out. He was Trump's Surgeon General.
Gotcha. Ben Lubin writes.
By the way, the new Surgeon General, I don't agree with Trump on whatsoever. She has her medical degree from the Caribbean.
What do you think of this comment from Ben Lubin? Smoking cannabis was used for asthma. Cannabis may soothe and fight lung cancer.
I'm not a doctor.
Too early to tell. Yeah. All right. 4:15. This might be a short one here today, but let's welcome in. He is the president of the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. Back to the podcast, Michael Bronstein. Happy Monday. Good to see you. How are things?
Happy Monday. Getting ready for a nice Thanksgiving holiday. And I agree with Anthony. I think you got to ditch the turkey. I did that a number of years ago, and it's just never been the same since. It makes it
a thing of the past.
You have turkey, and I'm not kidding you. A good half an hour afterwards, 95% of the people in the room are asleep. Don't get me wrong; it's decent, but so what is it again? It's what did you say? Wagyu prime rib or something like that, Anthony?
Yeah, Wagyu standing prime rib roast.
I mean, that sounds delicious.
Doesn't that sound amazing? So what time does that kick off?
I'll probably start cooking at like 9.
And then family.
I have like a fire pit that I'll just keep working all day for like probably 8-9 hours.
Oof. How many pounds?
It's about 6.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, make sure to post that on your storylines on Instagram, because those are the best.
You know what I will be doing is I will be drinking senoritas while I'm cooking. They come in very handy. So Ben, if you want to send your boy some product, I'll send you my address.
There you go. Well, Michael, wanted to have you on. We got the news last week that I guess hemp farmers, it was thumbs up. For cannabis supporters and followers, they were a little disappointed, to say the least, that this current farm bill remains the status quo, and this loophole is going to remain intact, where a lot of hemp farmers are benefiting and leaving a lot of cannabis companies clearly discouraged, to say the least. But one thing I wanted to have you on, because you know this topic probably better than anyone, is it's not no completely, it's just no for now. So do you think there will eventually be some sort of modification to the farm bill that closes this loophole at some point in 2025?
I do. And I do think that when we talk about the farm bill and sort of where it's at right now, the farm bill negotiations really didn't have much to do about anything on this issue right now. It was much larger issues that were in the farm bill that have, that sort of elicited the reaction that we saw in Congress. And I wouldn't say that things are, I wouldn't say that things are dead. What I would say is that, both sides are trying to figure out how to negotiate what the next farm bill looks like. And likely what we're going to see is we'll likely see an extension of the farm bill. But the point is that this issue is very much live. And it's come up in a number of different venues, a number of different avenues at this point in Congress. And when Debbie Stabenow released her draft, Chairwoman Stabenow released her draft a week ago, which is ultimately, was ultimately the Democratic version of the draft on the Senate side. What we did see was we saw language that would essentially move towards a more restrictive regulatory environment that we would see going forward. So to me, that was a signal. That was actually a signaling moment, because what you saw, and for anybody who's been following this, is that both Democrats now and Republicans previously on the House side have now said in a bicameral, bipartisan fashion that this particular provision in the Farm Bill needs to be addressed.
So what is that? Let's unpack that a little bit. Because it's something that we obviously are seeing bipartisan support and coming from different houses of government. Where do you think we wind up? Because both languages that we have seen on both sides of the aisle were pretty. They wanted to roll it back, and they wanted to basically do blanket bans. Are they telegraphing that this is where they really think it should go and where it should be? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, there's a question of, and I think that the industry is spending much more time talking to itself than it is to listening to kind of what's going on the outside of this and in Congress. I think that really what we've seen is there's sort of this argument in industry that well, actually this thing in the Farm Bill was largely popular and there was intent behind it, right? But then when Congress has been given the opportunity to talk about and say what their intent was, none of them point to the 2018 Farm Bill as a bill to legalize synthetic THC and all of the and all of the alphabet soup of synthetic products that we're seeing on the market right now that claim to be federally compliant. I mean, look, if we thought that it was going to step in that direction, well, then why didn't we see the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act amended, right?
Yes.
Why did we see 0.3% THC to begin with? Why would you even have a definition like that if you weren't trying to level out in the market what the difference between an intoxicating product and a non-intoxicating product was, right? Like, so I think there's a lot of revisionist history around the 2018 Farm Bill that's been built out. And what we've seen over the last, over the last several months is you've seen regulatory enforcement actions stepping up on this. You've seen governors step in on this. We saw an attorney general letter that went to Congress. So, the view here is like, I think really what we need to be doing is we need to be legalizing natural THC.
That was my next question. What we're seeing with this administration, or at least what they've been telegraphing, is a common sense approach to cannabis. I haven't heard them talk about hemp whatsoever. Is there a possibility that, let's say, they look at the Farm Bill and they say, well, the way that this is structured, there really is this shouldn't be included in the Farm Bill as it relates to intoxicating products. Is there a potential that they take, let's say, a common sense approach, rip it out of there, and bring it into the HHS and the FDA's purview to where they're regulating intoxicating hemp products, just like they plan to potentially regulate cannabis, as THC is THC, if you're looking at it objectively?
It would take an act of Congress to do it, because they would need the regulatory authority to have to be able to do that, to be able to have a straight legalization program, or at least measures to make the restrictions less than we've seen. So we've seen bills that are out there trying to address that issue, I think unsuccessfully so far.
Yeah.
Right. We saw Ron Wyden's bill that was out there, which, the issue with Ron Wyden's bill is it does everything but legalize, natural THC, right? Which is the thing that legalizing.
Also, isn't it heavily predicated on the loophole that's currently, it's heavily predicated on the current definition. So if that definition changes, that bill is essentially rendered useless, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that it would have to be reintroduced in another. You'd have to be reintroduced in another Congress anyway, and I think that addressing that issue would probably have to be further down the line. The point is that you want a regulatory structure, and you don't want a regulatory structure that incentivizes products that are for lack of a better term, synthetically made,
Yeah,
and also have a health and safety profile that that points towards legalization. Because one of the things that we have here in market, and this is what has happened. We have people out there arguing that synthetic THC products are actually hemp, and nobody understands that the way that these products are actually being made, and I think that legislators have caught up on this, is that they are actually, many of them are synthetically derived. And when folks are saying, well, it legalized marijuana, a large portion of it really is actually gained from synthetic conversions. So,
well, there's going to be a lot of people. I'd be surprised if a lot of people did know that outside of the people that follow the space closely. But reading a room and walking into a room and seeing what's going on and what's next. We had Boris Jordan on a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about, do you think cannabis operators will push for like the farm bill as a backdoor legalization, is what the Cole memo wrote. In a lot of ways, he was kind of basically painting the picture that let's not scale down hemp farmers. Let's actually leapfrog what the cannabis space could eventually become, because a rising tide rises all ships. And he's kind of hinted before in the past that the two industries could eventually work with each other. Walk us through what you see and hear in the discussions that you have. Like, is that a real possibility? And again, we don't want, I just think we want an even playing field, but at the same time, too, we want both industries to flourish to create more awareness towards it.
Yeah. And I guess the question is, are they two industries? I guess is the first thing, right? And I think the second thing is, I watched the comments that were made by Boris, and I thought they were really they were instructive, because I think that he sees kind of a three-pronged approach to how this could play out. What I would say about that is there probably was a time where if you went back and we started from the beginning, that it could have legitimately been argued, certainly around natural THC, to try to create some of the protections that would be needed around it. The problem is how far folks went with it, right? And they went far, right? Like, is THCP like supposed to be considered hemp? Well, there are a lot of people that are marketing products that are saying these THCP products, or THCO, or you pick the name, are actually hemp products, right? And the problem is that, so with legalization, we're not really going to get legalization through the back door, because everybody has to buy into the fact that we're legalizing. That's how we get a good system. So what we're seeing in certain states is now there are regulatory rollbacks that don't really make much sense, because the problem is people are reacting to what they're seeing in the market, as opposed to actually creating permission for these products to be in the market. Marijuana legalization, I always like to say, is not a right, it's actually a privilege. Right. And people who look at the Farm Bill, they're reading the Farm Bill like people who are looking at this, they're trying to say that the Farm Bill is like the US Constitution. It's not. It gets amended every 5 years. Okay. That is not something, and I've said this on the show before, when we do marijuana legalization, it's going to be very important that we have standalone legislation, because we don't want this thing up every 5 years. We want legalization to be legalization. Okay. So if we try to kind of backdoor our way into it, we're never actually going to get the market that we want out of it. And if we're in a gray area, what does that really do to things like, regular trade, capital markets, the commerce that you would normally see around it? And then also public health and safety, which is actually the ability for us to operate really is predicated on public health and safety and consumer protection. If we violate that, then we are going to be much worse off as an industry going forward.
Yeah. On the state level, do you think that that's going to continue to just progress and snowball? Because we are seeing state level bans. We've seen some of them go into effect, and we've seen some of them repealed. I know the one in New Jersey, it was all kind of wonky the way that it was written. I think they had said that they were going to start pulling product off of shelves and ban it, yet they weren't actually allocating any resources to enforcement of the ban. Do you think that we see that trend start to continue until this comes to a head and there is something in the Farm Bill that's addressed?
Yeah, I think that we're going to see things I think we're going to see action at the state level, and we continue to see action at the state level. And we've seen all different types of action on the state level. And I'll just say, as an association, we believe in states being able to enact their own marijuana reforms as well as their own hemp reforms, right?
Yeah.
If folks want to create programs like that, we're all for that. Okay. But it shouldn't be we shouldn't be a backdoor. I think we have to be honest with what it is that we're doing in the legislature. If we're creating a natural, intoxicating, for lack of a better term, hemp program in a state level market, let it have all the rules and let it have all the rules and guardrails that are actually needed with regulation around it. And let's try to steer clear from the idea that putting out synthetic intoxicants is a good idea really for anybody. I mean, so I think that we're getting I think that we're really getting into we're really getting into a spot where it's choppy waters going ahead. I don't think there's ever been more of a challenge, quite frankly, in the industry than what we see right now over this issue. This is the industry issue.
It's the issue. But have you ever been, I mean, you're in the room with a lot of lawmakers, policymakers, CEOs. Have you guys ever been in a room and talked about the actual products when we say naturally derived THC from hemp, and then you talk about cannabis and cannabis derivative products, whether it be concentrates, vape, et cetera, from a dispensary? Has anybody just been like, guys, there should not be a bifurcation between the two? THC is THC when we're talking about naturally derived THC, and these should kind of just all fall under the purview of like one streamlined regulatory system?
Yeah, it's talked about a lot. It's like, okay, well, why should there be two regulators, right? Why should there be two systems? Why should there be, right? Certainly in states have had that discussion. Why would we have the agriculture department, which doesn't really have the tools to do it, relative to, another name X regulator in a state, because states have different, regulatory models on it.
Didn't Michigan consolidate the two? I think they consolidated.
Yeah, there's been more. What we've seen going forward, and I think what we're going to see going forward, is there's going to be more consolidation because the knowledge base of regulators is not housed in one spot. So we've seen that at the state level in a number of different jurisdictions, and we've seen some strange outcomes in the states. Right? You've seen everything from completely legal, regulated, synthetic THC market to, a sort of dual system that you see in Minnesota to, outright bans that we've seen in other states. And, the reality is that cannabis legalization happened at the state level. A lot of the rights that are predicated at the state level that we enjoy as an industry are ones that are going to have to be protected under any federal legalization. And federal legalization, and I say this to people a lot, it cannot be worse than the situation that we have right now in the states. If we are to legalize federally, it can't be it should not be a step backwards. It should feel like a step forward, right? And so that needs to happen.
Do you get the impression a lot of these hemp farmers know they're getting away with a lot?
I wouldn't say that, so I think that we have to, and think about this like the Farm Bill, okay? Yep. And what the Farm Bill is doing right now. Hemp is actually, and I think that this is widely agreed upon by everybody, that it is a great idea to separate out what industrial hemp is from what a final product or what a cannabinoid product would be, right? That's the problem. The Farm Bill doesn't regulate by final product. And it can't, and that's part of the issue, right? So the thing is that when we talk about hemp farmers, it's not the farmers, right? Farmers are selling biomass and they're sending it basically to people who are chemists, right? Like that's kind of the problem that's kind of a lot of the problem that we have right now. And then also,
you believe that totally though? Like that's like, I know lots of guys that own buildings. They basically rent their space out. And then what it is black market comes in and just selling weed everywhere. They have to have an idea as to what's going on. So these farmers have to have a certain idea as to what's going on. Do you not think? If we're talking about it,
I mean, look, I think that there's all types of things, and that's the problem with the regulatory environment right now. There are all types of things that are actually going on. We see product that's inverted in the system, right? Inverted into marijuana markets, or we see product crossing state lines that was never really quote unquote hemp, and it's just being sold as THCA flower, even though it doesn't meet the the testing requirements.
Dank Informer, who's actually very, very well informed, no pun intended, on the hemp space, he's had product tested, and THC and product that was being tested for, I think, THCA flower, it tested as hot flower. It was cannabis. It was probably cannabis from California that was being sold as THCA flower, which is, I'm sure, is rampant everywhere. And then once you get into, Adam Terry from Cantrip was on with us, and he was talking about once you get into the best practices and the actual synthetic derivatives with D8, THCP, HHC, you're talking about chemical bonds being broken and free radicals being produced within that process that we actually don't have any idea from a safety standpoint how those products should be ingested, interact with the body. That becomes a whole different conversation.
It is, but it impacts the legal market. Yeah. And I think the thing is that the legal market, like, people have talked about it in terms of commerce. I think, like, really the concerns that we have are public health and safety concerns about the product, and then people passing off product that is bad product and saying that, it's hemp, even though they're selling, a synthetic product, right? Yeah. That's a problem. I think if people felt that a consumer would use that product, why wouldn't they just say it was a synthetic THC product? Why wouldn't they say where it was coming from? Right. And the thing is like the label. All right. The label is the thing that will set us free here. Okay. We have to tell the truth as an industry about what is going into the products.
Yeah. Dank Informer, you've had some great comments here today regarding that, but finish your thought, Michael.
No, Dank Informer was crushing it. So I didn't want to get in the way of that.
But if we're being honest, we have labeling problems in the regulated cannabis industry. I mean, it's been a black eye on the legal industry for years that there is a little bit of a fugazi when it comes to testing. We saw a whistleblower in California, I think 2 or 3 months ago, that came out that there was a big testing scandal. I mean, I've heard of pay for play testing. So, I mean, I don't want to come off as some like cannabis industry has the moral high ground here, because with your argument that the label is everything and we need to kind of streamline and really put clamps on it once and for all, we need to do that in the cannabis industry as well.
Yeah.
I agree with both. Like, the thing is that we have to do that everywhere. Okay. Yeah. We're not just saying, all right, and we represent, okay, we are the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp, right? We fought in the 2014 Farm Bill that did the original pilot programs. We were around for the 2018, Farm Bill. This year's our 10th anniversary. So we were there. We saw all of it. We helped bring the hemp cultivars over for the first time in America when they were first grown. Okay. What I would say to you is hemp has a really bright future. And the problem that we have right now is that products are being mislabeled and sold under that product category for all different types of reasons, right? And you've named all different types of things. Okay. We have to, in order to mainstream this industry,
yes,
we have to deal with the fact that some things are not going right in this industry. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the legal cannabis chain, right? The thing that I don't hear right now is I don't hear enough self-accountability, right? Because that's the thing that's going to save us. There's got to be self-accountability, leadership, right, around it, certifications around these things, right? And a testament to the quality of the product that's put in the market. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Yeah, good point. Thomas Broberwitz, I actually met him on LinkedIn. He's a hemp farmer, writes, do any of you believe the USDA will ever have a marijuana division? Your thoughts on that?
USDA, I think FDA eventually.
It could go. So when we've commented on federal legislation, we've said that you regulate by final product, right? And where would most of this be housed? And I think that we are moving, if we do this right, I think a final product would be housed and, under TTB with a memorandum of understanding with FDA. And I think that when we get to a final product state, I do see USDA regulating from an agricultural perspective, but I don't see them involved in kind of the final product situation. But they could have a division. I wouldn't rule out that there could be a division that would look at it from an agricultural perspective.
Thomas, if you're still watching, maybe you follow up as to like what your reasoning for that question is, but I'd like to hear more from you. But yeah, it's an interesting topic, but Dankenformer, I think, has a lot of the stuff that he had outlined too. It's just the packaging and what's being basically advertised right now. Thomas writes, naturally derived means it has been taken off the plant. To me, that sounds like would fall under the USDA is what he has outlined.
I think on a product by product basis, there's an argument as to where these things are regulated. And like I always say,
this is good. The issue with THC flower is that THC degrades with time and temperature. So the question becomes, when was this product legal to be put into commerce as hemp flower, natural flower?
The timing discussion matters. And then here's the other thing. What if the testing regulation is changed as to the time of when it is? This is why I think we need to be out of the Farm Bill discussion, right? What happens if some of these measures happen and then there's a question about the when testing is going on, right? Because if there is an intent around when that happens, then you have no regulatory certainty. And that's kind of the situation that we have right now.
Yeah. Great comment, Guap. The problem with THCA is it is cannabis. Good point.
Is that El Guapo? It's a sweater? Is that what that was?
That is El Guapo.
Is El Guapo.
Yeah.
I've always kept in the back of my mind we do a lot of stuff with GMOs, and I've just, for some reason, like, why can't we genetically modify hemp to where it just doesn't produce THC, and then everyone that's growing it will actually be able to use it for the applications that it was meant to be: textiles, hempcrete, industrial hemp, not intended for intoxicating products. But that's probably just a pipe dream as it is right now.
I think we have to get to a point. Like, look, the intoxicating part, it's like, also, what do you think this industry looks like in the future, right? Let's imagine what it looks like.
Yeah.
Right. Do we think, right? And I think that some of where hemp products are right now and how the future looks is instructive relative to where the cannabis industry could go. Okay. We know that demand is there, right? Demand is there for natural cannabis products. I think people, I think that this is a proof. I think it's a proof point for it.
Ideally, I mean, some people might agree with me on this as well. You take the beer and spirits analogy. You've got naturally derived low dose hemp products that are available at C-store, at big box liquor, at gas stations, at retail, and then all the other products, concentrates, vape, flower, etc., it's relegated to the dispensary, where it should be. That to me seems sensible. I could be wrong, and I'm sure someone will disagree with me, but just using the beer and spirits system seems to work pretty well in practice with what they're doing right now.
I think one of the things that we have seen in terms of distribution too, I think there's a question about, all right, well, what does distribution, look like into the future? Because the reality is, if you don't have some sense of control over what distribution looks like, you actually have a very hard time in terms of ensuring what's in the market, and also probably taxation issues that likely arise around it too. So kind of, I think that it makes people, it's asking the questions. If you're going to regulate a certain way, what does the future of the product category look like? How do you envision it? Okay. Yeah. And that's, I think, the thing that's challenging people from a regulatory model. And like, our view here is that from a federal perspective, and I think this is more likely with a Republican Congress, but I also think it's more likely with a more kind of generalized, small c conservative viewpoint of where we're going federally. Like the States Act is something that I think is a lot more palatable for a federal overlay than some of the other things that we've seen out there. Certainly, as I think we move forward as a model.
Yeah. Well, how excited are you to see this new administration come in? What's your thoughts?
I mean, I think that it's going to be very interesting to see from a policy perspective what goes on. There was a lot in the industry, and especially over the last couple of weeks, right? First, we had we had the discussion around Matt Gaetz and cannabis policy, right? And I think what we started realizing, even though that nomination came to pass, we saw RFK, right? The thing that we know is that marijuana legalization and your view on it is certainly not a disqualification to be named into cabinet, right? Which I think also means that it's not a disqualification for policy in the future. I do think that in Congress, though, Congress has gotten more conservative around these things, and looking out and going forward, is the path easier or harder? I think that it's just different.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think that this path was ever easy. I think it's different. And we as an industry, to really lead where we have to go, we have to make decisions about what we want regulation to look like and not change it from Congress to Congress. Right?
Correct.
Well said.
Yeah.
That's a great way of putting it.
Otherwise, we're a moving target. Are we too liberal? Are we too conservative when it comes in, right? We're an industry, okay? We want to do business. We want to be regulated the right way.
We're dealing with the same problem. We're dealing with the same problem the tech industry and the crypto industry has been doing for some time now, screaming from the mountaintops, regulate us sensibly. We want it. And they're still left out in the wind. And they've got more pull than we do. In Washington. So hopefully we can get something done with this administration.
I think executive actions could be certainly, could certainly be done. You see executive power, and I don't think the Trump administration hesitates from using executive power. I think that they want to do policy making.
I think that's what's going to be needed with some of this stuff. The challenge.
Go ahead.
Lawmakers that are just completely out of touch with everyday American people.
I was going to say, but from my understanding, can the executive branch change with an EO or an EA? They can't change the scheduling because that would be fundamentally changing law, correct? You would need an act of Congress to do that.
We're going through the scheduling process right now. That was an executive decision. That's about, from an executive action standpoint, that's about what they could do. But why couldn't they, look at, why couldn't they look at something like, saying something about a capital markets thing? Or why couldn't they look at enforcement discretion around this, right? Like something that we saw around the Cole, a Cole memorandum, right? Like here's the deal. We all thought, and I remember when Trump was first elected and I was around and I was at this association, it was a very uncertain time, to say the least. Yeah. Right. We had Jeff Sessions. We didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
We are not in a spot right now where we are going backwards. Right. And I will actually say to you, I'll give you another highlight from the interview that you did with Boris Jordan again. He said that the industry doesn't have a product problem. Is it a regulatory problem? It doesn't have a market problem. It has a regulatory issue, right? And I think that that's largely correct, that there are regulatory issues. And in my view, regulatory clarity is something that is needed. Regulatory clarity is something that can be gotten. Right? We can get regulatory clarity through a farm bill situation, right? We can get it so that state level markets, and by the way, interestingly, in Senator Stabenow's language, she had language in there that would allow states to regulate in their own way, right? That to me is a real signal here from Congress that we'd say, okay, well, a state authority to regulate these products is sacrosanct, and it's also popular, I think, in Congress. Maybe as popular as regulation around this and restricting, some of the issues that are going on. I think a narrative in Congress, quite frankly, is taking shape. The question is anyone in the industry willing to listen to it?
Correct.
Well, we're going to find out, right? Bring on 2025. Michael, always appreciate checking in with you, and let's keep in touch, okay?
Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for all the work.
Well.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Michael.
Michael.
You too. Talk soon.
Yeah. I think my internet is going a little slow here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you were glitching a little bit.
Yeah, I'm glitching a lot here.
Earlier.
Well, interesting topic to say the least. That's going to grab a lot of people's attention. But I like what he said at the end here. We're not going backwards here. We're moving forward. And that's all that matters to me, and I think a lot of people in the space right now.
We are moving forward.
We are moving forward.
Happen in 2025.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't agree with me. I'm kind of just going to give the people that are in place the benefit of the doubt and go by what they've said in the past. And hopefully we get some progress in the future.
Yeah, agreed. Hi at 9 News. Nice to see you. Trump administration will be the best for cannabis policy anyone has ever seen in their lifetime. I hope you're right.
Someone agrees with me. It's great.
There you go.
Because there's a lot of people on Twitter that don't. But there's a correlation between all of them. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. Well, listen, great show here today. We're at the 45-minute mark. We'll let you run, but make sure to scan that QR code below and subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. And then, like I said, we got an interesting conversation coming up with Ras Azadian. He's the CEO of Avicana and big background in pharma, especially in the cannabis space. So we're going to dive in deep as to what rescheduling, if that were to come, what would that look like? And what would be some of the things that we should expect in the early days of when rescheduling happens and what we can be prepared for. So that's coming up Wednesday at 4:00. In the meantime, sir, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I'll see you back here Wednesday at 4:00. Okay.
Yep. We'll see everybody then.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Where's Arns? Did Arns get disconnected?
Oh, maybe. Hold on.
Do you want me to click? I'm gonna just go end stream, or you do it.
Hold on. We do this.
We have lost our producer.
We do that.
Good night, everybody, and good luck.
Hold on. Where's the outro?
Just cut it.
All right. I'm cutting it. Goodbye, everyone. We'll see you back on Wednesday at 4:00. Thanks, everybody, for watching our latest Trade to Black podcast. Listen, the U.S. election is now over. We're now in some uncharted territories and what to expect next, knowing the Trump administration will kick in next year. So what is next for the cannabis industry? This is why we need to stay connected. Ask any questions. We love your feedback. And always, as usual, if you haven't subscribed, please do so now. We greatly appreciate it. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.